10 years. That's how long it's been since NECA released this particular version of Freddy Krueger. This is the NECA 1/4 scale Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 2, Freddy's Revenge, originally released in November of 2016. I actually purchased this figure back in 2023, so I've owned it for about 3 years already, but for whatever reason, I kept putting off doing the review. 2026 marks the 10th anniversary of this figure's original release. So, I figured there couldn't be a better time to finally take a really detailed look at it. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Hauntasm channel. Let's get into it. Let's start with the packaging. NECA went with a large window box, but instead of simply making a standard rectangular front panel, the opening is designed like a door. And that's a really fun touch. You literally have this door that opens to reveal Freddy inside. There is artwork on the entire box, and as I show the back of the box, you can see several shots of the Freddy figure. On the bottom right, it states that this figure comes with a removable fedora, alternate heads, and alternate right hand. Then there is a 2-short paragraph bio about the Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 movie. Let me quickly read it to you. 5 years have passed since Freddy Krueger was sent howling back to hell. But now a new kid on Elm Street is being haunted every night by gruesome visions of the deadly Dreamstalker. And if his twisted soul takes possession of the boy's body, Freddy will return from the dead to wreak bloody murder and mayhem upon the entire town. Once you get Freddy out of the box, the first thing that hits you is the scale and weight. At 18 inches, this Freddy has a very imposing presence. You've got the fedora, the striped sweater, the dark pants, the boots, the glove, and of course, that burned face. There's no mistaking who this is. By the way, the box with the figure inside weighs 5.67 pounds, and the figure itself is over 3 pounds, which makes this Freddy a solid figure. Let's talk about the sculpt. Because we're dealing with a 1/4 scale figure, NECA has considerably more real estate to work with than they do on their smaller Freddy figures. On the head, you've got the individual burn textures, the recessed areas of the skin, the wrinkles and folds, the uneven surface of the cheeks. This isn't a smooth surface with a few lines painted onto it. The texture is actually built into the sculpt, and that's important because paint can only do so much. When you have sculpted texture underneath the paint, the lighting naturally catches those raised and recessed areas. That's what gives the face dimensionality. A good sculpt should still look interesting before the paint is even applied, and this one does. Now, when we talk about Freddy, we're not necessarily looking for a perfect photographic likeness of Robert Englund. We're looking for Freddy Krueger, and I think they capture that character particularly well here. His expression has that sinister, almost predatory quality that works really well for Part 2. The eyes are especially important. They aren't simply painted straight ahead with no personality. There's a direction and intensity to the gaze that changes the way the entire face reads. And that's one of those little details that becomes much more noticeable at 1/4 scale. Moving down to the sweater, you've got another area where sculpt and paint work together. The red and green stripes are obviously one of Freddy's most recognizable design elements, but NECA didn't just rely on the colors to sell the sweater. There's texture sculpted into the material. You can see the knitted or woven appearance, along with folds and creases where the fabric naturally bunches around the torso and arms. At 1/4 scale, a completely smooth sweater would look cheap. Instead, the surface texture gives the sweater visual interest even from a distance. The pants are much more understated, but again, you've got sculpted folds and wrinkles rather than a completely flat surface. The boots are nicely sculpted and have that worn, utilitarian appearance that fits the character. There's also paint variation that keeps them from looking like a single piece of black plastic, and that's really the theme of this entire figure. It's the combination of sculpted texture and layered paint that keeps it from looking a boring plastic figure. Speaking about the paint, Freddy's skin isn't just one flat flesh color. NECA uses multiple tones to create depth in the damaged areas of the face. You've got the various reddish shades and pinkish tones that help create the appearance of burned and damaged skin. The result is a face that doesn't look like a clean plastic sculpt that was simply sprayed with a skin tone base coat. It has variation. The eyes might be one of the smallest elements on the entire figure, but they're incredibly important. You've got the whites, the red-colored irises, and black pupils. Those little highlights are what make the eyes appear alive. And then there's the mouth. The teeth aren't pristine white, thankfully. They're given that yellowed, dirty appearance that makes much more sense for Freddy. This is exactly the sort of paint detail I like. The paint application on the sweater also helps with the overall look. His red and green sweater is just as iconic as his glove and burnt face. Both his organic monster right hand and his hand on the left are sculpted and painted to look like real hands that were burnt. As for his pants, the dark color variations complement the sculpted folds and wrinkles, and the boots are nicely painted as well with great detail, creating realism along with the sculpt, which helps to complete the worn appearance. And then, we have the alternate head. This is where things get really nasty. This head represents Freddy in a much more monstrous state, with a more exaggerated transformation detail. Look at the mouth, the sculpted tongue, the rotted teeth, his red demon eyes, and the burned head with the exposed brain. There's a lot going on here. Now, let's talk about the glove. Probably the accessory everyone wants to get a closer look at. Freddy's iconic razor glove at this 1/4 scale size looks absolutely fantastic. The larger scale really allows to showcase the finer details, from the individual fingers and sculpted leather texture to the long razor-sharp blades. The blades have a metallic finish that contrasts nicely against the darker, more subdued appearance of the glove itself. That difference in finish helps separate the materials visually and gives the glove a much more realistic appearance. Another detail that really stands out is the bronze-colored metallic piece on the top of the glove. It has a weathered, aged metal appearance, and they did a great job capturing the intricate detailing in that area. When you look at the glove up close, there's actually quite a bit to see. Between the sculpted leather, the metallic blades, and those smaller mechanical details, it feels like a miniature prop from the movie, rather than simply an accessory attached to an action figure. Throughout the movie, Freddy's connection to Jesse is much more physical than what we saw in the original film. Freddy isn't simply appearing in Jesse's dreams, he's trying to take over Jesse's body and use him as a host. We actually see this transformation beginning with Jesse's hands. Freddy's blades emerge through Jesse's fingertips as his body starts transforming into Freddy. Instead of the familiar leather glove, we get this really disturbing image of Freddy's razor blades essentially becoming part of his flesh. Look closely at the sculpt. The hand has that almost charred, mutated flesh appearance, and the fingers transition directly into those long blades. The blades themselves have a metallic finish, which contrasts against the organic texture of the hand. So you've got this really interesting combination of flesh, sculpted texture, and metal all in one. And I cannot forget Freddy's fedora. Unlike the body, which is made out of a hard material, this fedora is actually softer and a bit flexible, sculpted to match the one in the movie and painted in brown and black. As for movement, NECA gives this Freddy more than 25 points of articulation. You've got articulation throughout the neck, shoulders, arms, wrists, legs, knees, and ankles. Now let us go over the pricing. As of the time I'm recording this review, NECA does not currently have this particular Freddy available to order directly. Amazon doesn't have it available at the moment either, and Toy Wiz is also out of stock. However, Big Bad Toy Store has it listed for around $130 available for pre-order, while Entertainment Earth has it listed for around $140 also available for pre-order. And of course, there's always eBay if you want to try your luck. Remember, this is now a 10-year-old release, so availability is obviously going to be very different compared with when this figure originally hit stores. And as with most collectibles, the price can vary quite a bit depending on the condition of the packaging and the overall condition of the figure itself. I've seen asking prices as high as $600. Once a figure reaches 10 years old and becomes harder to find, it can become much more appealing to collectors who enjoy hunting down older releases, especially any that may be discontinued. That being said, do your research before you buy. Don't assume that the highest asking price represents the actual market value. Compare different retailers, look closely at the condition, and make sure you're getting all of the accessories. At the end of the day, finding the best combination of price, condition, and completeness is really the goal. So, after owning this figure for years and finally getting around to reviewing it during its 10th anniversary year, what's my verdict? The sculpt has great detail, and the paint application gives the figure multiple layers of depth. The sweater looks like it has actual texture. The two different head sculpts give you completely different display options, and the classic glove looks fantastic at this scale, as well as the fedora. The organic hand is a fantastic movie-specific accessory, and he has over 25 points of articulation. This 18-inch Freddy Krueger weighs over 3 pounds, which gives the character the presence that Freddy deserves. This figure does have holes on the bottom of his boots for a stand, but he stands perfectly well by himself without one. I bought this figure back in 2023, and I've had it sitting in my collection for years, but reviewing it now gives me a completely different appreciation for it. 10 years after its original release, I think this is one that's worth hunting down. Just make sure you're buying the complete figure, inspect if you can, check the paint, and, most importantly, don't confuse an inflated asking price with actual collector value. If you enjoyed this detailed collector-focused breakdown, make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and let me know what you think of this particular Freddy. And I'd especially like to know, what is your favorite NECA Freddy Krueger figure? Is it the original Nightmare Freddy, Freddy's Revenge, Dream Warriors, or one of the later versions? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next review.